The misty mountains. How did it go? I don't even remember.
Ooh, no, that's...
It's been too long.
Yes. Yes. That's right. That's right, everyone. You were asking for it. Maybe not with your words, but with your minds, you were asking for it. And now Dustin and I are here to bring you HooperCast with the Precious...
The Precious Cast.
We're... Shit, I lost my train.
I'm sorry.
Well, I think what I was trying to do was welcome everyone to episode 34 of the HooperCast, in which Dustin and I shall discuss The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Oh. Let's just dive right into it. No use twiddling our thumbs.
Indeed.
Twiddling our feet, our hairy hobbit feet.
Our hairy hobbit feet.
Anyway, well, I walked out of the movie. I didn't walk out of the movie. I concluded my viewing of the movie about an hour ago. You saw this at midnight, did you not?
I did. Which was an experience, I will tell you.
How was that?
Well, for whatever reason, I always think The Lord of the Rings is a little more mature than most other franchises. So I don't know. I was expecting like some adults being there and like everybody would be like, "Oh, we're really excited for this movie." But instead it was just like a bunch of like obnoxious like 16 and 17-year-olds who were like obnoxious and telling stories. They were literally arguing about My Little Pony versus The Legend of Zelda. And I don't know how they are related, but they were literally arguing about it. And grown men, well, not grown men, but 17, 18-year-old men were arguing about this. And then there was one guy, he was real fat, and he was up front, and he was standing talking to people, and he threatened a guy twice that he would fall on him if he said that again, which was indeed a very threatening prospect. For this man was quite large. And he has some very opinionaid beliefs about The Legend of Zelda, let me tell you.
Which I didn't think anybody could have, but I guess...
Yeah. Like, no, The Legend of Zelda is better than My Little Pony.
Yeah, well...
Yeah.
You should just be like, look, you're both wrong, shut up.
It was... And then they started talking about Prometheus, and one of them was trying to explain it, but he was explaining it wrong. And I just wanted to look at him and be like, dude, they weren't on LV-426, get over it.
No. We have to be better than them, Dustin.
I know.
Otherwise, how were they in the theater? Were they okay?
Oh yeah, they were good. They all shut up once it came on. I think everybody was there to see the movie, and it was just before it. They were all really rowdy, and I guess they were probably just excited. And but yeah, no, everybody was really good, and it was a really good audience actually because they were really into it, you know, as far as like clapping when things happened and laughing at the jokes, and it was it was a good audience to be a part of, and that's really why I enjoy midnight movies, is because everyone just seems a little more, you know, into the film, and you're less likely to get bombarded by like people who just come in to like kill time. You know, those are the people that talk. Those are the people that are obnoxious during the film. Yeah. And so as obnoxious as these people were, you know, during, you know, the like pre-show stuff, they were all perfectly fine during the film. So
that's good.
Yeah. And then my second crowd, I saw this a second time a few days later. I saw this opening night, and then I saw it again on Saturday, and they were less into it. I don't think they had a sense of humor, but there was one woman that sat in front of me that overreacted all the time, like gasping very loudly at certain parts. And then the guys behind me could not understand a word that Gollum said during the thing, which was hilarious. And anyway, you know, it was not quite as good. But both times, I will tell you, there was noticeably like an electricity in the audience when Gollum showed up, which I think we'll talk about a little later.
Yeah.
So how was your audience, Hooper?
My audience was fine. I mean, it's Tuesdays here in Mobile. Hollywood Theaters has matinees for $5, so I saw this for $5. It was fine. It was okay. I didn't have trouble getting a good seat, and there are people who are like, there was like 100 trailers before the movie.
Yeah,
after everyone,
really were.
After everyone, like there'd just be like a shot. Like there's, I want to talk about the Pacific Rim trailer, but I won't because just to keep this a review. But then the Pacific Rim trailer, they do that thing where they tell you the title and then they show one more like big shot from the film.
Yeah.
So and the Pacific Rim trailer is just like one of the mechs, like, you know, getting hit by something and falling and sliding and standing back up, and then like it, you know, all the credits, oh, Guillermo del Toro, you know, blah blah blah. And then like when that went back to the next, when it was about to start the next trailer, some guy was like, okay. I was like, shut up. God. Is that going to be this, you know, and especially during the movie, of course, when they're at Bilbo's house, you know, like, we're short one dwarf, oh, he'll be here, he's just late, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, they're all eating and stuff, and the door knocks really loudly. Mm-hmm. Some kind of theater felt the need to explain to us who that might be. He was like, that's the 13th dwarf they're waiting for. And it's like, I just want to turn around and be like, no shit, guy, alright? No shit. Like, probably. Yeah. And you know what? You could...
Just let the movie unfold.
Yes. They're probably not going to look at the door and say, you know what? Let's not answer the door. Let's stay in the rest of the house for the movie. We'll never find out who that is. And, you know, that's probably not going to happen. Your question is about to be answered. Why don't you just keep your fucking mouth shut and, you know, just let them open the door and find out if you're right. If you are, la-di-da. It's not that hard to predict. Anyway.
Yeah.
And make me lose my temper.
As if he was, like, predicting, like, an M. Night Shyamalan twist.
Right. Like, it's going to be...
Oh, I bet he's dead.
It's just Ed McMahon at the door like, Bilbo, you want $1 million? Ho! You know, like, who else is it going to be? For real.
Yeah.
You know.
Ty Pennington. Attention, Baggins family!
We know your pipes are bad. We're going to rebuild your house. And Bill was like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I was going to lose my house.
I seen it in the tape, but I didn't know it would amount to anything.
What would, you know, Hobbiton be like on oh God, what's the name of this show?
Oh, Extreme Home Makeover.
Extreme Hobbit Hole Makeover, where they just dig a much deeper Hobbit hole. And he has, like, 7 floors to his house. You know?
Yeah, Ty Pennington, like, opens the door. And here's your basketball court.
Yeah. And he's like, what am I going to do with this? I don't play... I'm 3'5". How am I going to... This is... Okay, thank you, but I'm probably just going to put a bunch of boxes in here and use this for storage, so...
Yeah.
Anyway. Wow. We digress.
We do.
Let's get into the film. I don't know... I'd like to know what you think of it overall.
I was definitely pleased with it. I mean, I saw it twice because I was not because I was like, that was so bad I have to see it again. I was like, I wanted to see it again because I wanted to give it a fair shake, and I spent most of the movie the first time around just like smiling like a 12-year-old, you know. On Saturday morning, like watching Pokemon or something. So, like, I wanted to give it a fair shake, so I watched it again. And I can legitimately say this is a great film. It's not just, you know, my fandom clouding my mind. This is a good movie.
I agree. I had my smile moments as well. Yeah. You know, as you will, but I mean, like, it just, not only was it fun, but it was well directed, it was well acted.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a story well told, and I was so pleased with it. Like, I figured it would be good, but I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did, and I did. Yeah. I really liked it, and it's a great film, and yeah, it was just good. I mean, I suppose we can talk about why in a little bit here.
I mean, I had lowered my expectations, you know, for the film because I thought, okay, The Lord of the Rings, like, they're the reason that I went to film school. Like, if I had to pinpoint one thing that put me in film school, it was The Lord of the Rings. And so I look back on them with such fondness that I just knew this couldn't possibly, match up to them. So I lowered my expectations so much that I was so pleasantly surprised when it happened that I had to see it again to make sure I wasn't just like, you know what I mean, like clouding myself. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think you have a good point. It was well directed and well performed, which I guess we can talk about a little bit later. But yeah, I was very surprised with the film, and I loved it.
I guess we can talk about the story first, really.
Sure.
The story basically begins with old Bilbo, with Ian Holm coming back and playing Bilbo, and from what I can gather, it's pretty much he's sitting down and writing The Hobbit on the night of his 111th
Birthday, yeah,
because just because Frodo showed up and they're talking about the party and everything, and like, it's kind of a spoiler. No, it's not. It's not like Frodo's part of the plot.
Yeah, it's like the first 4 minutes of the film.
Yeah, and just I'm thinking about what Frodo's wearing and everything is what he's wearing. The first scene he's in Lord of the Rings, like the wardrobe matches. He's talking about how he's going to go into the woods and surprise Gandalf, and so I'm like, the in and outs of this film take place pretty much like hours before Fellowship of the Ring starts.
Yeah, yeah.
At least in Hobbiton. Obviously, the meat of the story is 60 years prior.
Well, that's debatable because I was thinking about how they could end it. Like in the last book, the last movie, they'll probably want to bookend it with something with Ian Holm again. I don't know that. I'm just guessing. But I was thinking, really, if they do it before the party, there's really not any time because. You could do something with Ian Holm there, I guess, but like, there's not a whole lot of time, and he didn't finish the book until he was at Rivendell.
That's true.
So it would be cool if, like, it ends with him in Rivendell finishing the book as Frodo walks up to get the mithril from the Fellowship of the Ring. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, that would be cool. But yeah, anyway, that's beside the point. You can edit all that out.
But most of the story takes place 60 years prior to the Lord of the Rings, and Bilbo's a younger hobbit, and he's for people who don't know, that's pretty normal in the books because just pretty much everybody ages differently than humans do in the books.
Right? Yeah.
It's not
even humans.
I assume most people listening to this have seen the Lord of the Rings and know that kind of sort of thing. I'm pretty sure that in the Fellowship of the Ring, Frodo's like 55 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So
and freaking Legolas is like, I don't know, 200. I don't know.
Right, he's about 200. What was I talking about? Oh, so like, it pretty much is like it introduces Bilbo, and he's a pretty, I'd say he's a homebody. He's pretty, and he's uptight, and he likes his home, and not really unlike myself. Really, when I thought about it, it was pretty much a personal reflection for me in a way. But like,
me too. I think
but just someone who enjoys, spent a lot of time, procuring his living space and likes spending time in it. And then this wizard Gandalf shows up and pretty much tells him, "Hey, we're gonna go on an adventure," and he's like, "No, we are not."
Yeah, I don't want a part in that. Yeah.
But then they show up at his house, and there's like these 13 dwarves, and and basically Bilbo ends up agreeing to go on this this quest with them to reclaim their old kingdom. Erebor, is that it?
Yeah, Erebor.
Which was, that they give backstory on what Erebor is and why it has to be reclaimed. But that's what their quest is, and so they go out and do that, and on their way they encounter lots of obstacles and stuff like that. So, I did not like how I've heard someone's already say it's just another movie with a bunch of people walking to something, and I'm like, okay, well, I feel like by now you should sort of expect that.
Yeah,
Second of all, if all you saw was walking, then you've clearly missed the point of the film.
Yeah, exactly.
And the 2 to come, and the 3 before
Yeah.
it. I mean, if you missed all the fights and everything else, you know, I don't know. I don't understand that. But the movie's long, but I was never ever bored.
No, me neither.
know?
And it's actually shorter than any of the Lord of the Rings movies.
Oh, is it?
It is. It's shorter, I think, by like 10 or 15
minutes,
minutes
yeah.
than Fellowship. Yeah,
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
but it is still long. It's like almost 3 hours.
Yeah, it is long, but I thought it was great. Is there anything you want to add story wise?
Well, you know, The Hobbit. When The Hobbit came out, it was never. I think it came out in like 1937 or something like that, a long time ago, and so Tolkien, when he wrote it, didn't link it to the Lord of the Rings too much, and it's very different in tone, and even the quest is not quite as like high stakes as the Lord of the Rings, but and it's certainly more comedic. But the thing that Peter Jackson has done, and I think very brilliantly, is tie it in with the Lord of the Rings in a lot of different ways. So story wise, not only is it start with Ian Holm and Elijah Wood, which I think is brilliant, but it also mentions several things that we know are going to come into play later in the Lord of the Rings, and so just that connection there that wasn't there in the book. But I don't know if Tolkien enthusiasts or whatever are really happy that they're adding this stuff and making that connection stronger, but I certainly was, because I feel like since this is a prequel, I mean, anybody who saw the Lord of the Rings or read the Lord of the Rings and then read the Hobbit realizes that there's not a lot of connective tissue there, and so the fact that Peter Jackson has added that stuff, I find very refreshing, and like you said, it's never boring. Like a lot of movies would put stuff in there for all the fans to be like, but it would be boring or it would feel like a joke, and it doesn't feel like that in this movie, and it feels like it was always intended to be connecting, and I thought that was really cool, and we can talk a little bit more about that in spoilers if you want.
Well, I'll talk about how great the music was.
Yeah,
I thought once again Howard Shore did a fantastic job with the score and having music that both calls back to the Lord of the Rings, but also has its own identity and theme, and was very present throughout. And that's part of how you keep a 3-hour movie interesting. I was thinking about that during the film. I was like, if there was no music in the scene, it might. The acting's still good and the writing's still good. It's all visually still good, but it really helps to just have music driving it.
Yeah, to have so much to latch on to, to invest in, it really keeps you invested.
Right.
I thought the score was really good. I love, like you said, when it kind of called back to Lord of the Rings, like at the beginning, obviously you've got the Shire music going, and there's different calls throughout the thing, and then. What I liked a lot was, though, that I felt like it was a little more understated this time around. There's big themes, but there's not as many, and it's not as boisterous as it was in The Lord of the Rings. And not that it was too boisterous in The Lord of the Rings, but The Lord of the Rings is epic. Like, it needs, gravity to every bit, like every note that's hit has to have and The Hobbit's lighter, it's more comedic, so to have a more understated score, I think, was a really good choice, and I was really glad that they got Howard Shore back to do it, and that he was able to call back to those previous themes so easily. I love the score. I thought that was great. And I love the songs, like the Tolkien's, like the stuff that Tolkien wrote that they put in the movie. There was I think 2 songs, right? There's
a song in the Misty Mountains, and then there's
That's what Bilbo Baggins hates.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and so anyway, there's a couple songs, and actually the Misty Mountains song that the Dwarves sing, I believe it's actually sung by the Dwarf cast, and they Howard Shore calls back to that melody as they're walking or doing something with the whole company of dwarves, and I thought that was a really cool callback to sort of remind you where it all started. And I think that was really, really good. And that's one of the best Lord of the Rings themes, you know what I mean? So,
I mean, especially since that original song takes place, all of them in a very quiet, like, serious tone, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, we've been joking around all day, but, like, this is going to be really dangerous. And we might not all come back. And so whenever there's, like, whenever they're fighting or something and that theme is playing, like you said, it reminds you that, you know, remember where we're coming from, remember that we all know what this is and we all know what the stakes are for us, and it sort of just has this little teeny message of unity anytime it's used, and I like that.
I do too.
I really liked, of course, you can imagine these films are going to be, you know, heavy on visual effects, and they are, but they were good. I mean, as good proportionally now as the other ones were at the time, you know. I mean, you can watch The Lord of the Rings now and point out a couple of things, like, that's a little janky looking maybe, but, you know, at its time, The Lord of the Rings was groundbreaking with visual effects.
Monumental.
You know, the fact that you had, you know, there was a program developed for all the orcs and stuff that programmed them to, like, fight each other. So there's a lot of visual effects at play. Obviously, the orcs are not people in prosthetics. But they don't stick out like a sore thumb. They look like grounded creatures, and
they do.
Any time where you're seeing the entire company running on, you know, on like the side of a mountain or in the ending action sequence, which was so elaborate and so good. You know, there were times where you'd see like all the Fellowship running, and it looks kind of janky. But in this movie, I mean, whenever you're going to do a CG of your characters running that's supposed to look reasonably like them from a distance, it looks pretty seamless. Yeah. And I liked that. I just thought it was very beautiful and you know, reminiscent of the first movie, but like just, you know, you couldn't really tell, I think, where some CG was and where the practical ended, you know?
Yeah. Now, I do agree. I think the CGI is pretty fantastic on most of the things. Now, there are a couple things where it kind of dips down below probably where it should be.
Right.
I mean, there's one where it shows like the outside of Bilbo's house, and there's like smoke billowing up out of the chimney, and it looks pretty fake. But like, I can let that stuff go. Like, that stuff doesn't bother me. My threshold for bad CGI is like right below, like, I Am Legend. You know what I mean? Like, anything, as long as it's I Am Legend good, I'm good with it.
Right.
And so I can let stuff like that go. And I know a lot of people are complaining about Azog looking like a video game character, but I never thought that.
Which one was he?
Azog was the pale orc.
Oh. Well, I didn't think that either.
See, I didn't think that. I think maybe people that think that are thinking that because like his skin tone is so different from a human's, so it just doesn't look right to the human eye, you know, or whatever the case may be. I don't know, but it didn't really stick out to me as being like, oh, that's so cheap looking. You know what I mean?
Right.
And a lot of reviews I've read, people are really, really hating him, and I didn't really find that, but that's not to say that some of the visual effects are a little under, you know, the bar, and but for the most part, they are fantastic. And also, maybe we can talk about this more later, Hooper, so you can edit this out if you want. But the motion capture stuff that they did is just so good. Like, I've never seen motion capture this good. It just looks, just the, you know, the facial expressions that Andy Serkis gave to Gollum in this film just blow the other trilogy out of the water. It's so good. But yeah, so yeah, I loved the CGI, but I can see where some people are coming from.
Along with the CGI, there's also the action. I thought every action sequence was well choreographed, and I mean that's sort of in tandem with, you know, the VFX, because when you're swinging it at like a big, if you're swinging a sword at a warg, the big like wolf things they ride, you know, obviously the wargs aren't real, so every composite shot in this film was really well done. Like impacts felt real, you know, the visual effects felt, every CG character felt like they had real physical weight as opposed to just being a purely visual element. So that's both VFX and sound, I guess. But with the action, the composites worked really well. And just if anyone was ever tackled by an animal or something, it didn't look like, it wasn't obvious that they were pulled back by wires and it was timed. You know what I mean? It was it felt very real and it helped me focus on the story. I appreciated that. I appreciated just all the sword fighting sequences. There was never a part where I looked and I thought, oh, see right there, this guy behind him. Sometimes you can see like, you know, that if an orc could like while he's fighting a bunch of orcs, one of them clearly has a shot at his back. It doesn't take it. You know, there was none of that. You know, there was all I saw was competent fight choreography, and
I agree.
Again, it just helped me focus because at this point, all I do is look for that stuff. That's all I do, and I was able to enjoy it.
The same way. Something I thought was kind of cool was the intensity of some of the stories because. At times, this movie kind of feels like, okay, here's a story, and then like here's the main story, and then someone tells a story, and so we like divert from what is the movie is a flashback, so we divert from the flashback to go into another flashback, and so now we're seeing like another thing happening, and all of those I thought were really cool, and they add to the world of Middle Earth. And they're all added, like the battle at Moria. Like, that's not in the Hobbit book. But it was written about, that Tolkien wrote about it in, like, the appendices or something, or the Silmarillion, or whatever it is. I don't know. But he wrote about it, and so adding that in, I thought, like, really added some gravity to the film, because without it, it does play sort of like a Narnia movie or a lighthearted family movie. But then you have like these scenes like that where there's like a beheading and he's like holding like the king's head in his hand and he just kind of like throws it, and like that stuff like fits right in with Lord of the Rings. So I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised with the fact that they went to those dark places, because the Hobbit didn't do that. The Hobbit book didn't go dark, and I enjoyed that. That being said, though, I do still think this is a little more family friendly than the Lord of the Rings. Yeah,
I think so too. But hey, who knows what's going to happen with the other two?
Right? Yeah.
And even if they're just as family friendly, it's still a great, enjoyable movie, and it's
exactly
every bit as interesting as the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I guess we can go into spoilers. I guess if people haven't seen the movie yet, I highly recommend going to see this, and I can guarantee you'll enjoy it unless you suck.
Unless you're an awful human being with a soul, you will probably like this movie.
Well, I mean, I will say it like this: like, if this is one of those where I can definitely say, if you don't enjoy the movie, I think you're missing the point. I don't understand how really anybody could not at least enjoy themselves in this movie.
And I think if you like Lord of the Rings, like if you really like Lord of the Rings, you're gonna like this movie.
I mean, I know some people who are like, Lord of the Rings was boring, and I'm like, I don't see how you can think that.
Yeah,
you could say parts of Lord of the Rings
long,
are like,
but
there's a good bit in any movie, in any action movie, you have to break it up with what in screenwriting is called the meadows, where you have an action beat, and then you have the meadow, which is usually like the part after the action, like, man, a couple of guys might have died, or now we're going to reflect on some stuff for a little while. But that's where you build character, and that's how you keep the story going and that's how you give the action scenes a meaning. So if there's no meadows in an epic fantasy, then the battles have no weight. So
then it's just a video game.
If all you can see as is boring scenes, then don't go see it. Go play a video game or something. But I think you'd be missing out. Okay, so now we're about to enter spoilers for The Hobbit. So if you haven't seen the movie,
shall not pass!
Okay.
Give them a moment, for pity's sake.
Off topic. Like one of my favorite moments of the Lord of the Rings trilogy was that very beginning of the Two Towers, where Gandalf falls, and you're like, because everything is just like, you're just like, okay, this is the scene from the first movie. Oh, he fell. It's sad. And then as soon as like that shot changes, I was like, wait, that wasn't in the first. And you follow him down. I'm like, what the? Are we gonna watch him hit the ground? This is fucking morbid. And then he just falls and grabs his sword. I was like, oh shit, he's gonna fight it. Yeah. And he just grabs a hold of it and starts like stabbing the shit out of the Balrog. Yeah. And I'm going, oh my god, what's happening? Like, this is like, oh my god. Yeah, and like that so entire scene, just following him all the way down, stabbing the damn thing. I was like,
so good.
Anyway, well, I think I'm going to watch the second movie after we're done with this. That scene is so badass. That's one of those scenes in movies that I always remember is like, you know, when you think of like badass moments in cinema, that's one of them. Is just old ass Gandalf grabbing a sword and stabbing this like, you know, this monster, this fire
huge
monster.
Demon,
Yeah, that's, oh my god, it's so cool.
It's awesome.
Anyway, well, enough about the film we're not reviewing. Maybe we can talk about Gollum.
Okay.
Obviously, he's present. There's a certain point in the film where we could talk about in specifics, but I feel like we're in spoilers just to allow like a little bit, not to actually pick the movie so much apart. But
right.
There's that point in the movie where Bilbo encounters Gollum. And Gollum's also younger, but it's like you said, the motion capture on him is brilliant.
It really is.
There's so much subtlety that if you've followed Andy Serkis's career as a motion capture actor, or just an actor by way of motion capture, then he's pretty much the best one at it. Having
undisputed champion.
Having basically pioneered it. And how, from being Gollum in the 3 Lord of the Rings movies, and then as King Kong in King Kong, and then as Caesar in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where there was a huge breakthrough with like facial expressions and everything. Yep. With motion capture, and then it just keeps going forward with this. And this is what they were saying back when Rise of the Planet of the Apes came out, but I don't understand how that does not make him eligible for an Oscar.
I think it ought to.
Because if you think about it, it's so much more of a challenge to act, on a soundstage wearing a goofy-ass suit with a bunch of, sensors on it, and not only, it'd be hard enough for him to be in prosthetics and be Gollum and be on set, but he has to do so much, and at the same time, so little with his movements, and just making this beast, and if you think about Gollum being like a truly to way simplify it, abusive, devious little thing, because he's just this vicious bastard, but he just, as soon as he gets like afraid or vulnerable, he's got those big eyes, and he's just like, and you pity him. From the Lord of the Rings, the real reason Gollum is still alive is because Bilbo pitied him, and he did not kill him, and you can see why. It's just like this is just sad creature. I think it would be a shame if he didn't get an Oscar nomination for this. Yeah.
This is one of the best characters I've seen in a movie this year, period. And I knew it was going to be, because Gollum is split personality. He's like so layered in a way that characters aren't layered anymore. And when Andy Serkis plays Gollum, he gets to play a villain. He gets to play like a puppy dog. He gets to play all kinds of emotion with Gollum, all in a very short amount of time. And not only that, but he gets to hop around and dance around and just be so theatrical with his performance, movement-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And then so subtle with his face. It's just magnificent to watch happen. And I think that, he probably won't be nominated for anything.
Right.
But he deserves it so much.
Mm-hmm.
Because he stole the movie for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, when he showed up, there was such electricity in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that with the last time I felt that in a theater was when the Joker showed up on screen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's the last time I felt that. And it's ridiculous, the amount of beauty in that performance, and it's a shame that he probably won't be recognized for it.
Like you said, when he comes on the screen, he's sort of in shadows, but you see like the light reflecting in his eyes. I was actually scared.
So cool.
I was like, "Oh Jesus!" Like I was
Yeah.
so creeped out, and just like because I was just the shot itself suggests like that you should be afraid of this creature, but obviously knowing the character's history, like this is nothing but trouble, and truly fearing how smart he is, and just when he figures out like that he's lost the ring, and that he figures out pretty quickly Bilbo has the ring, and just how utterly pissed off he is, and just distressed and fearful, and just it's like watching an addict,
Yeah.
And just how truly just helpless he is when he thinks like that Bilbo might have escaped with it. He's wrecked, and then when he realizes that Bilbo is nearby, just right back to anger. Like once it's back within his grasp, he'll kill for it. And it's, like you said, it's so much of a layered character. You should be afraid of Gollum not only because he's just unpredictable, but he is smart as hell. Smart enough when he's leading Frodo into Shelob's lair, and like I don't have to do anything to him. I just have to lead him up here, make him think I'm helping him, abandon him, and then after the spider kills him, I'll take the ring.
Yeah. And speaking of good like performances, we've got to talk about the scene in Rivendell between Cate Blanchett, Ian McKellen, Hugo Weaving, and Christopher Lee. Like, I love those four actors together,
Yes.
At this point in the film, because if you're watching the spoilers or listening to the spoilers, you've probably seen the film. That there's been a clue found that Sauron may be, in fact, returning to Middle-earth. So they meet these wise, elves and wizards to discuss what to do. And not only do you get to see a good bit of vulnerability in Gandalf at this moment, which I think is a refreshing thing to see, because I think Ian McKellen gets more to do in this film than he ever did, and he does more with it, because Gandalf before was kind of, in the Lord of the Rings movies, he spent the majority of the time as Gandalf the White, and that Gandalf is more theatrical, is more, has more gravity, and he's more of a god, really. And then Gandalf the Grey is more subtle and more understated, and he gets to play vulnerability. He gets to play fear, unlike any other time in the Lord of the Rings. And so in this scene, we get to see how scared he is that Sauron may in fact be returning, and we get to watch Christopher Lee play this character who's like, no, nothing's happening. But we know as the audience that he's already in bed with Sauron at this point, and he's just trying to keep Gandalf from
off his scent.
From exposing that, and then Galadriel gets to be this source of comfort for Gandalf. And it's just great to see her talking to Gandalf in his head, and then there's a scene between the two of them where she asks why he chose Bilbo for the burglar, and that showed so much of Gandalf to me. Like that scene proved that Ian McKellen understands Gandalf unlike anybody else. I
Yeah.
mean, to have that vulnerability and the fear that he had was really interesting to watch. And of course, Howard Shore plays the Shire theme over it, giving it so much more emotion than it even would have. And I don't know, I just that scene was particularly moving, I think, to see Gandalf that way, in a way that we hadn't before. But yeah, I didn't expect to see Christopher Lee back in this movie.
I didn't.
I figured
either.
I knew he'd be back. I just didn't know when. And as soon as you hear his voice before you see him, and it's like, oh snap, here it comes. And yeah, that was awesome.
Let's talk about the dwarves real quick.
Okay.
What a great chemistry they all have, and a great group they make, because their camaraderie is essential to the film. As obviously you're supposed to root for them because they're the good guys, but they're also very layered. I mean, Thorin himself is a complex character, and he doesn't know whether he can trust Bilbo. He does not trust the elves. He's a layered character, and to see him go through the changes he goes through in the movie is satisfying, and because he's effectively the king of the dwarves, and what is his has been taken from him, and to see the strides his character makes in pursuit of his goal is gratifying to watch.
Yeah. And it makes it feel like a complete film because there's an arc. There's an identifiable arc for him and Bilbo in this film. In that by the end of this one film, they're different than they were when they started. And so it feels like a more complete film. And yeah, you're right. It's very gratifying to watch.
And now finally I'd like to talk about Martin Freeman. Martin Freeman is great.
He nailed it.
He is great at everything that he does.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, this guy nails John Watson, in the Sherlock series. By his very nature, the kind of actor that he is a perfect choice for Bilbo to pretty much start the movie as just this kind of antisocial homebody with a stick up his ass.
Yeah.
To take that from resistance to reluctance, and then just to this earnestness and ultimately this heroic nature was extremely believable and satisfying, and he was a great choice to portray that, I mean, there's never a time where you don't sympathize with Bilbo. It's never like, well, why wouldn't you go on the adventure? You understand why he doesn't want to go in the first place. You understand his concerns. You're with him. And obviously it's important to be with your main character like that. And Martin Freeman was just a perfect choice to play this character.
Yeah, indeed. I think, in a way, I've always been more moved by Bilbo's story than I ever had been Frodo's. And it's not that Frodo doesn't have a good story, but Bilbo, to me, is a character that I think pretty much everyone can identify with. It says, okay, here's who this character is, but secretly, like very secretly, way deep down, maybe even he doesn't know, he longs to be a hero, to be an adventurer, to have a story to tell people. And I think that's extremely relatable. Everybody wants to be able to tell, like, their grandkids or whatever, here's what I did when I was young. And everyone, it's human nature to want to test yourself and to see how far you can go, physically, mentally, whatever it may be. I mean, it can be as simple as like eating hot wings. Like, let's just see how hot we can make them before we, can't eat them anymore. You know what I mean?
Pass out.
Yeah. Everyone wants to see their limits, and so, but that's a hard thing to put on film. Someone who has a desire that they don't even know, but Martin Freeman pulled it off, brilliantly, in that you can see in his eye, like when they're asking him, okay, we need you to be our burglar. They don't say it in those words, but you know what I mean. And as the thing's going, there's a reason that he keeps hanging around the table where they're talking. and then he keeps, butting in when he does. He desires something that even he doesn't know that he does, but we can see it, and that's such a. I don't know if any other actor could have done that, to be neurotic and all antisocial, and yet still be a part of this adventure in this way.
Right.
It just took an actor like Martin Freeman to be able to say. Wait a minute, did I say Morgan Freeman a minute ago?
No, you said Martin Freeman. No.
Okay.
That'd be an interesting movie, though.
That would be. That would even be an awesome movie.
I don't want to go on this adventure, but if I have to, that's not him at all.
Well, that was
when I first met
closer
Gandalf, he was a tall drink of water. So is everybody I meet who's not a hobbit, because I'm so fucking short.
Well,
being the only black hobbit is very hard.
There aren't any black people in these movies.
I'm wondering if that's ever going to be addressed.
Quick, Hooper, name one black person in any Lord of the Rings movie. None.
T-Dog,
None.
T-Dog, the dwarf, he just shows like, hey, man. Where am I? Oh, that's not true. There are no black dwarves.
Tyrone. I'm Tyrone, son of Shaquille.
I'm Tyrone the Large.
You have my bow and my Glock, yo. One does not simply walk into Harlem.
No, one does not simply walk out of Harlem.
True. You can walk in just fine, but you're not walking out. And don't bother calling the cops, because they never come over here anyway.
It would have been great to make Smog black, just add some diversity, like, hey, you ain't taking this gold.
This is my goal. Give me the goal. I want to go. I'll uproot that tree.
I came in here with a backhoe because I wanted to know where the gold at. Anyway, I'll have to decide real hard later whether to keep any of this.
I know.
But every time I say that, I always end up keeping it. If I'm going to alienate listeners, I may as well do it now. If it wasn't today, it'd be another day.
I do have a couple complaints.
Oh, okay.
A couple of complaints I already kind of hit on. One was just some of the CGI, is not quite as good as it should have been.
Sidebar, was one of those that shot where they're pretty much at the end of the movie where they're all on like the cliff and just kind of looking? Because to me it was so obvious they were on a green stage.
Yes, yeah, it was. Another one was just there's a couple parts where, like you were talking about, it was like far away and it was like CG characters running or whatever, and sometimes that got a little like obvious, but most of the time it wasn't. And when they were in the Goblin Cave, they were running across the bridges and whatnot, and there was a couple times that seemed a little off, but for the most part that was really good. And the Goblin King, oh my gosh, that guy was so well rendered though, that it's impossible to hate that guy. Dude had like a saggy freaking neck, like nobody's business.
Oh,
that was so gross looking.
Yeah, no, it was disgusting. I was wondering what was underneath his neck flap.
Yeah, the dude looked like George Lucas or something.
What are you doing down here?
This is a subtle jab at George.
This is where I live now.
Was that George or Bill Clinton? I couldn't tell.
No, this is Bill Clinton. Please, please. I'm down here getting so much tail. It's unnatural how much tail I'm getting. That's... After a while, you get tired of banging orcs and you want to go up to the surface and get some real people, you know what I mean? Yeah. George Lucas is like, hey, I'm down here. And,
yes.
Yes, I just, eating a lot. all the time.
Yes. Whenever the Goblin King like showed up and he was like he like got off his throne or whatever, his neck flap is like all like sagging and like flopping. And the guy beside me goes, that guy's got like a ball sack for his neck. I was like, thank you. Now I can never watch this movie again.
He's a Balchinian.
And dude had some massive man boobies.
He had some
goblin boobies.
Some goobies.
Gooby.
He had some
big goobies.
He had some tig old man bitties.
Yeah, I love the little like
one
messenger
shot
goblin that's like on that little zip line or whatever.
Yeah. There's one shot where he's talking and like you can see a profile of his nipple. Because I was I was looking down like, where's his neck end? And it goes right to his nipple and it's on the side. I was like, some guy's job was to sit there and render this dude's nipple like through every stage of like visual effects.
But I loved the part wherever he goes like, what are you gonna do, wizard or whatever? And like Gandalf's like slashes his stomach. Yeah, and then he's like, well, that'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, that was so funny.
I actually thought like they were gonna have his guts fall out. I was gonna be like, oh my god! Like,
I was like, this is some Rambo junk.
Yeah, no, for real. When you're talking about the overhead shots with like it's obviously CG stuff. Like, I think what because I recognized the same faults you did. I think what I meant with my my comments on those was that if you're gonna have CG, characters fighting, you need to make sure their movements look natural, and not like they're video game characters from overhead that you're controlling. Because video game characters move pretty unnaturally. You had to make sure that and I felt like it worked. I thought that they got down natural movement a lot better than the Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the time, no one did it better than Lord of the Rings. But
the other thing is towards the beginning, there seemed to be a little bit of. I was off-put by Gandalf was talking about the other wizards, and he says, "Okay, well, there's Saruman, and he's the white, and then there's a couple blue wizards, but he doesn't remember their name, and then there's Radagast, the brown."
Yeah.
And then we cut over to like a bit with Radagast, and I felt like that was really abrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know when else you could have done it, or how else you could have done it, but it felt a little abrupt, and it felt like it kind of interrupted what was happening.
Right.
And so, like, this whole scene happens where he, like, saves the life of this little hedgehog.
Mm-hmm.
And who was, like, cuter than all get out. But, so he saves this little hedgehog's life. And then he, like, jumps on his sleigh of being pulled by rabbits. And then it just cuts back over to Bilbo. And I was initially, like, really angered by that because I felt like I didn't have a point. Like, I felt like, okay, obviously this has to lead into something, but it may not lead into anything in this movie, or it may just not lead anywhere. It may just be because at that point you also don't know that they were going to bring back Azog, because you get like I think Balin is telling the story of what happens in Moria, and so Azog shows up, and then they say like, well, what happened to Azog? And then Thorin says he died long ago of his wounds. But then there's like a look from like Balin and Gandalf that makes you think he didn't. The thing was, like, both of those things kind of happened fairly close together. And so I was kind of off-put by the fact that it jumped into like a couple stories like that. Yeah. And I wondered if the whole movie was going to be like Peter Jackson going into like the appendices and pulling out like random stories and then just thrusting them in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
But I was really relieved when Radagast showed up just a few minutes later, you know, with the story of what happens in Dol Guldur, and you know that that's going to feed into the rest of the series. And then there's obviously Azog shows back up, and so the fact that those were both continued sort of renewed my faith. But in the movie, the first time, I was a little put off by the fact that it just seemed to be like a couple people telling a story. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it didn't seem to have a point, and it felt abrupt and like interruptive. But the fact that it continued made up for it. But it does feel a little choppy to begin with, the movie, and so I would have to criticize it for that one thing, that it felt a little choppy to begin with. What did you think? Did you feel that way?
I remember thinking like, well, Radagast is not any of these main characters, so why are we seeing what he's up to? I remember at the time thinking that, but then it ended up being relevant, so I kind of I was able to sort of let that go. I was more bothered by the end action sequence when they're on like the scaffolding that falls like 1,000 stories down like the cliffs or whatever. Because I remember thinking stuff like that. Like it's not that I don't buy them surviving. I just wish it wasn't so obvious that this could never actually happen. Like, it would have flipped over, and then Gandalf's old bones would have just broken against a cliff, and not to mention even when they survive, when like the guy's dead body falls on them, that they'd all be crushed to death. But that was really my only real complaint. I was like, we couldn't have found like a better way down this ravine and away from the orcs, like because they essentially like surfed down the mountain.
Yes, they did.
Didn't really like that, but
I
actually cringed.
I was reminded of DuckTales during that. Like, this is something that would happen to like Scrooge and his nephews.
Right.
So yeah, I see what you're coming from.
I was reminded of DuckTales when, at the very end when they show like the inside of Erebor with all the gold. When they're like zooming out and then like smog opens his eyes, that'd be so funny to just CG Scrooge McDuck diving through the gold and have smog eat him.
Me money.
Money! Oh!
Oh no! That would be hilarious. The other thing, I want to get your opinion on this. Mm-hmm. I didn't care much for the Stone Giants sequence.
Oh.
What did you think about that?
I didn't mind the trolls. I mean, I thought it was just fine. It was, I think, an early test of just a way to sort of help you ease into Bilbo's courage a little more. I felt like it was well used.
I know, I agree.
Because you can't have him they give Bilbo a lot of chances to do more and more things that require more and more of his courage. And so I didn't mind the early scene. He didn't have to do a lot in that scene. Like, it wasn't a big jump. Like, it was not far-fetched for Bilbo to do what he did in that scene, considering it was a pretty passive way to save everybody. So I felt like it ultimately served the story, and so I didn't mind it.
No, I agree. I wasn't saying I didn't mind it, or I didn't like it. I was just saying.
Yes, you did.
Don't put words in my mouth, Hooper. But no, I thought the Stone Giants were a little, like, it was really cool to look at, and it was a really good sequence. Mm-hmm. It was just, I felt like oddly placed, and like it didn't have much impact on the story as a whole.
Yeah,
like,
right.
If they had found another way to like bring it back, like bring those Stone Giants back and do something, I just feel like it didn't have much to do with the story. I felt like it was just like, okay, we need another action sequence, let's have this one. And so anyway, I didn't really care for that too much, but that said, it was really cool to look at, and it was really cool. It was just, I didn't feel like it had much to do with anything.
Gotcha.
So I guess my complaints are some, not much, but some bad CG, or not even bad, but just like not as good as the rest of the movie.
Noticeable.
And then choppy storytelling, and then the Stone Giants. Like that's pretty much all I have. Oh, and then maybe the awkward snot humor when the guy blows his nose on Bilbo, the troll.
Gross. That was so gross.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Peter Jackson.
Okay.
It was insane to me for those months or whatever where he wasn't going to be directing this.
Yeah.
Where he was like, I'll produce it, but I don't know if I want to direct. I feel like I don't know if I can direct it. And then it was going to be Guillermo del Toro and a bunch of these other people. And I remember thinking, like, I'm not opposed to that, but why doesn't he just direct him? I never understood. And then when he was finally like, I'll direct him, I was just like, good, because I want you to. I want you to. At that time, it was only going to be one movie, and I was like, why don't you just go ahead and direct it then, dude? Like,
Yeah.
So I'm glad he was back, because I just could tell that, like, I was just like, just the sweeping camera movements in these films. Like, I feel like just Guillermo del Toro would have taken not a very different approach. It would have been fine. But since it does tie into Lord of the Rings, I prefer it being held by the same director, because the looks can be consistent. And I just, every time that there was a movement, I remember thinking, this, I can't say for sure, but this probably wouldn't have been there and if Guillermo del Toro had done it.
Right, I agree.
Felt like it was uniquely Peter Jackson's way of filmmaking, and I prefer that.
Yeah, I agree. There was also a time where Ian McKellen was on the fence about coming back.
Yeah.
And I think all of that is just, everybody loves The Lord of the Rings and the way that it turned out, and nobody wanted to be at fault for, ruining it.
Right.
And I think that's what it was. It was just pressure, It was, well, I have to go play Gandalf again. What if I'm not as good as I was? Or in Peter Jackson's case, what if they don't what if I pull a George Lucas and it's just not as good?
One way Peter Jackson was able to avoid that was by not giving R2-D2 a jetpack and flying across Middle Earth. So
yes, that was, or having a Jar Jar Binks type character who's
God,
oh my God. But I think like I said, I love the fact that this ties into Lord of the Rings as much as it does, and it helps tremendously to have the same man behind the camera. You wouldn't think it would be that big of a deal, but it is.
Yeah.
Because, the Harry Potter had a good, continuity, but, it was multiple directors. But, it's just unmistakably Peter Jackson. And I feel like that makes all the difference.
I'm also very glad that these are going to be a trilogy.
Yeah, me too.
Because, we've talked so much about this, so we don't have to go super far into it, but just the fact that considering what they're doing with it, with the appendices and everything, I thought 2's fine, and then everyone's like, they're just doing what Harry Potter did, and what Twilight did, what everyone's doing, we're just splitting it up, and there's not enough material. And it's like, first of all, I agree, Harry Potter shouldn't have been split up into 2. I think it should have been one big 4-hour movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It works better as a whole rather than 2 parts. I definitely agree that Twilight, you can make that argument about Twilight, it definitely didn't have enough material for 2 movies. It would work better as 1. The Hobbit could work as 1, but just considering how well paced this movie was, being only a third of the story, like I don't know how I would have felt about it just being 1 movie. Like walking out of there today and feeling like, well, that's it. That's the whole story. Right. I like it unfolding slower.
Yeah, I do too. There's been, and I think that matches Lord of the Rings better.
Yes.
Now, there's obviously been other adaptations of The Hobbit, like in animation and whatnot, and I've seen it on stage actually, and the thing is, it's very, quick, and it moves very quickly. Like the scene with Gollum here takes probably 10 minutes or so. And, in all of these other things, it's like a 2-minute conversation where it's very much just, hey, who are you? I'm Bilbo. Okay, let's have a riddle contest. Okay, here we go. And then they riddle a couple times, and then, okay, well, I got to go by. And so he's from New York all of a sudden.
Okay, well, I got to go by.
Okay, well, I got to go by. I got to go get some coffee.
Yeah.
And so, but they skim over things a lot. And I mean, the troll scene was a lot of just, okay, let's make it like it's a lot of talking, you know what I mean? And and it takes a while to do the troll scene, and in everything else it's like, okay, we're captured, okay, let's talk for just a minute, and then the sun's up, okay, bye. And so and everything is like that. The Hobbit is very much a roadshow kind of deal, so it's like 5 steps, oh, here's an obstacle. 5 steps, another obstacle. 5 steps, another obstacle. And so in all these other versions, it's really quick, and it's like, boom, goblins, boom, elves, boom, this, boom, that. And it just moves so quick that it's hard to follow and just too much too fast. I much prefer this because it's slow and it lets things build, and it had a good, narrative that, lasted this whole 2.5 hour, almost 3 hour thing. I wonder if there's going to be an extended edition. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm getting a billion different thoughts. But yes, the point is, I can't imagine this as one movie. I can hardly imagine it as two.
Yeah.
And the other things are, they don't include the battle at Moria, and they don't include Azog at all, and they don't include, all of these things at Rivendell, like reading of the map, and then, the council, and they don't include Radagast and Dol Guldur and the Necromancer, and none of that happens, and so it would have just been so rushed and so unfulfilling to not have a connection to Lord of the Rings and not have all of this stuff that Tolkien wrote that's so brilliant, and know that, okay, we're done, this is it, we're probably never going to see Middle Earth on the big screen again. And we never got to see Sauron return to power. We never got to see, all of these brilliant things. If this follows the book, this was the only movie that Gollum will be in. Mm-hmm. We won't see him on screen again. So the fact that it was 10 minutes of Gollum was so satisfying. If it had been 2 minutes, that would have been so depressing. To be like, we'll never see Gollum again. And so anyway, I agree. I think it was a wise choice to split it into thirds.
Right, and it's weird because we are the only two people, in my encounter, that feel that way. Everyone else is else is like, oh, it's just money, and it's like, you can think that if you want, but I feel like I've just made a very good argument for why it's good that it's 3 movies.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever seen the Silmarillion? Dude's like this thick, and like, there's a lot of story to tell here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like I said, it's so well paced that I wouldn't. There's no way I would like it to be one movie, and it's just over too quick. I left this movie wanting more, which is good.
I did too.
I'm eager for the next film, and that's how I should feel.
I would rather want more and know that there's still 6 hours left than to be at the end of The Hobbit and want more and know that we'll never get another movie in Middle-earth.
Exactly, yes. Regarding your comment about the extended editions, I think there probably will be something.
I would think so. I noticed one thing that was in the trailers that wasn't in this movie, and I can't imagine that they would do it in any of the other movies.
What?
There's a shot in the trailers of Bilbo walking up to the broken sword in Rivendell.
Yeah.
And he never did that. And now it's been a long time since I've read the book, but I don't believe they come back to Rivendell.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just missed that scene in this movie. So I can only imagine that they would do an extended version. And
there's probably containing more scenes that would explain why Bilbo is, because he obviously wanted to stay in Rivendell. I mean, that's where he ultimately wants to go in Lord of the Rings. When they're leaving Rivendell in this movie, he looks back like, I don't want to leave this place. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a good amount of material in there, sort of explaining more personally. Sure. Obviously you want to stay in Rivendell. That's the thing. Like, from the movie you get, obviously you want to stay here. It's great, but you want to know why intrinsically he would rather be here. What about this place draws him?
Right. And a part of that reason may be that they had that big scene with Elrond and Gandalf and Galadriel, and so it would have been awkward to cut in the middle of that and just show Bilbo approaching a broken sword. Mm-hmm. That would have just seemed like a reference to the fans for no reason. So maybe in the extended version there will be more time for that.
Right.
But anyway, you mentioned the dwarves. Let me mention this real quick.
Okay.
A lot of people complain about the dwarves because traditionally they've all been shown as old men with long beards, and there's some young ones here who don't have beards, or just have scruff or whatever, and then there are the old ones with long, huge beards. I like the fact that Peter Jackson went out of his way to, not Parker, went out of his way to differentiate the dwarves as much as he did, because even in the book, not all the dwarves have a part. It's just they're there because of whatever reason. I don't know. It could be that Tolkien was trying to mimic the number of disciples with the dwarves, excluding Thorin and whatever. But I don't know the reason that there were that many dwarves. But they don't all have a part in the story. They're just, some of them are just there to be there. And but the fact that, like, Bomber, let's use him for instance. I don't think he has a single line in this movie. He might. I don't remember. The only thing I remember him doing is, like, always running, like to catch up with everybody, and being fat and falling off a table. But the fact that he looks so different, is memorable. That's why I remember who he is. And so I love that they took their time in the design of the dwarves and took liberties with them as well. Mm-hmm. And they don't all just have axes. There's swords. There's archers. I mean, who thought there were dwarf archers? And then there's all kinds of different orcs and trolls and not trolls, but goblins. And I thought it was really cool, the variety of the character design in the film.
Yes. I definitely agree.
Yeah. And I think that was a wise call.
One thing we didn't mention, but we don't really have much to say about it, is we did not see this in 48 frames a second or 3D. All I can say is I've heard good things about the 3D.
Yeah.
I haven't heard great things about the 48 frames a second, but you have to realize, when you're watching a television with a higher refresh rate than you're used to, HD video already looks a little too real, in my opinion, in terms of just frame rate and the way people move. It's different than you're used to. So imagine 48 frames a second. Obviously it makes stuff clearer visually, but I understand how if there's composite shots and there's just a lot going on, it might make it look strange. I obviously cannot unrecommend it or recommend it, but we should acknowledge that that's
it exists.
Yeah.
I've heard very bad things about high frame rate, but I've also heard that people enjoy it and think it's, interesting, to say the least. It's just an interesting experiment in to see, where will film go next. I wouldn't mind seeing it in the high frame rate. I'm a little wary about spending, $12 to see it high frame rate, or however much it is. Mm-hmm. Is it more to see it high frame rate?
I don't know. I wouldn't think so.
I don't think so. But anyway, I'd just be wary of spending that money and hating it, I don't know whether the high frame rate version will be available on the DVD or the Blu-ray. I think that would be cool, because I would like to see it. But,
yeah, me too.
But I don't know that I want to go out of my way to see it in theaters. So, anyway, it exists. If you want to see it. If you don't. But be aware, it's probably going to be a little jarring at first. If you liked it, you can comment and rate below. what rate, comment, and subscribe.
That's all my notes.
Yeah, mine too. Except for this note that says "Kill Hooper."
Oh no!
Oh, I wasn't supposed to read that out loud.
Oh no!
Oh no! I was just gonna kill you.
I was kidding. People call me a murderer, even though I never been caught yet. Well, I guess that's it, Dustin. Hey, listeners, if you feel different or you want to tell me to go, F myself, you can email HooperCast@gmail.com. Or you can call me on my phone, but I'm not going to give you my phone number, so good luck with that, bitches. Anyway, well, thank you guys for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll do something involving our favorite movies of the year, probably.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, goodbye, Dustin.
Goodbye, Hooper. Far over
the misty mountains cold,
in dungeons deep and caverns cold, Something.
Okay.
Speaking of killing people,